Prime Minister Modi and 71 ministers took oath as the NDA government was sworn in for the third time. The new cabinet has 30 ministers, including 5 berths for key NDA allies. Portfolio allocation, however, is still awaited. We have, those are visuals, of course, coming in from yesterday, which was very, very keenly followed. Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya is with us, Editorial Director, Business Standard. We also have senior journalist Sanjeev Srivastava joining in. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for coming back on here on CNBC. Prashant this side. Mr. Bhattacharya, from a portfolio allocation perspective, which are the berths or the sort of postings which matter from a market point of view? Finance one. What else?
Well, all the infrastructure ministries are very important and critical. And the industry and commerce are also very important ministries that will be looked at closely. Of course, finance ministry will be the most keenly watched. But I don't expect many changes at this point in time. You have all the ministers who had manned, or if I may use the word, who had steered these infrastructure, commerce industry, and the key finance ministries are all there in the cabinet. These have all taken oath. Unless there is a major reshuffle of ministries among these candidates, I don't see any major surprise in terms of the ministry formation. You have got Nirmala in the cabinet, you have got Piyush Goyal in the cabinet, you have got Ashwini Vaishnav in the cabinet, you have got Dharmendra Pradhan in the cabinet, you have got Nitin Gadkari in the cabinet. So they're all critical ministers who had taken charge of the economy in the previous government. What will be keenly watched is whether some of these key economic ministries where next stage of reforms will require states' involvement go to ministers who come from the coalition partners. One of the key problems that the previous government faced was how, in respect of implementing reforms that involved the states. For example, there's a major reforms task that this government has on the third tier governance reform. Now, if you have a minister in charge who is coming from one of the coalition partners, I would imagine that task would be easier. Labor ministry is an important ministry wherein you have to notify the 4 labor codes, which Parliament had approved, but they are yet to be notified.
Right.
With the states on board. So there are some critical issues which will await the actual allocation of ministries to these ministers.
You don't, Mr. Bhattacharya, basically you're saying there'll be continuity. You were expecting continuity, right? Not very much in terms of even...
Because there are no surprises. There are no surprises in the inclusion of ministers who are already part of the previous ministry.
Got that. Mr. Srivastava, your sort of thoughts on the same? Are you expecting sort of any changes? And you know, for the last 10 years, I mean, ministers, of course, have been important, but overwhelmingly, the big focus has been on what Mr. Modi can do, right? The question always was what not A or B or C minister will do for a particular sector, but what Mr. Modi's vision is as Prime Minister for whatever sector. Do you think, I mean, you know, you're going to look at things like that, or individual sort of ministership, etc., becomes very important in that sense? Your thoughts?
So you're absolutely right, Prashant, that everything was driven largely either from the PMO or from the Home Minister's office. So even like agencies, ED and income tax, which come under finance ministry, were largely being seen as controlled by the Home Ministry. So in the list of important ministries which AKB just mentioned, I would also add Home. Whether there'll be continuity there, most probably there will be. See, one big point which I think needs to be underscored at this time is, while it all seems business as usual, continuity, Waters appear very calm. The ship looks very stable. After all, 240 is a very good number. You remember UPA 1 and 2 were run by much lesser numbers. But what I see and discern is this pattern or this approach of either the BJP spokespersons or the leadership or the entire ecosystem of media, that this will be a government just similar to what last 10 years was. And I think therein lies, in that attitude lies the problem. It cannot be business as usual. The government needs to adjust and settle down with the new reality. So even if the allies are not demanding much, it is a coalition government with a strong, very strong center with 240. But
Sure.
the attitude should be that it is a coalition government and Prime Minister is the main steering force. He is the first amongst equals. But the first amongst equals bit also needs to be emphasized little more than it was during the last 10 years. So I think that's something which is very important.
Absolutely, Mr. Srivastava. I think the narrative more in the market and business arena is economic policy continuity. Politically, of course, things will have to be different. Perhaps it will require a slightly different approach in terms of just, politically how things will be handled and how equations are going to be handled. And that's a no-brainer, right?
The two. The two cannot be segregated so simply.
Perhaps, and which is why my next question.
Yeah.
So, which is why my next question, allow me to ask that question. That's what I was just coming to, and I want to get both of your thoughts on this. So let's take a ministry like railways, right? And it's been the poster child. We've seen what's happened to railway stocks. There's been incredible spending, a lot of fundamental ground level changes as well in terms of the execution part, the way railway PSUs are run. Now, what if one of the allies asks for railways? What if Mr. Nitish Kumar demands that? A, do you expect that to happen? And B, even if one of the allies takes away important ministries, contrary to what Mr. Bhattacharya is saying, if the allies decide to take away some of these critical ministries, infrastructure or railways, then what happens? How should that be interpreted? Mr. Srivastava?
See, I don't think it is who will be having the ministry which is more important. Even if the allies don't get an infrastructure ministry or the railways ministry, the important thing is the approach. So last time I remember Prashant talking about an AKB raising the issue of welfareism. And I was saying that welfareism is not the takeaway from this election. But I am entitled to revise my thoughts. Like certain schemes, like I was talking to people, like with keeping in mind the Haryana election, the Agniveer scheme may be tinkered with or rolled back. That would have financial implications. Similarly, a BJP minister can continue to have all the infrastructure and finance ministry and railway ministry, but they will have to take on board the views of the allies, especially TDP and JDU. So it has to be, the approach has to be one of consensus and taking everybody along, which is where this government needs to walk the talk depending on what the ground situation and the arithmetical reality in the parliament is. That's
Mr. Bhattacharya? Sure. Mr. Bhattacharya, if you could come in on that, sir. I mean, even if, let's say, what Mr. Srivastava is saying, even if the minister continues to be a BJP candidate in some of these key ministries, will the allies still have a much greater hold, a greater sway and say in areas like finance, in corporate affairs, in railways and infrastructure?
Well, I broadly agree with what Mr. Srivastava has articulated right now. But I would like to add and maybe modify the proposition that you put forward, that I don't entirely agree that it will be the continuity that will be watched closely. Because if continuity were to be the main yardstick of judging the new government, I would say both the markets as well as the nation and the citizens and the voters would be a little disappointed. Because it's important to note that in terms of key reforms or the key important steps that will bring about greater efficiency in the economic system, the last 5 years have not seen any except Air India. There was no other privatization. So when you say about continuity, are you talking about no privatization in the next 5 years? Now that will be a disappointment. there has been no movement on the labor reforms front. Now, would you be happy with this continuation of no further reform on labor front? There has been no further movement on the well thought through farm sector reforms. Now, I think the idea is not to only see that whether the government is of continuity, but whether the government takes the necessary political risks or use its existing political capital to bring about the much needed reforms in key areas as what I mentioned. So I think it's important to have ministers who are in charge of key economic and infrastructure ministries, but at the same time, those ministers should be empowered. And if that empowerment means that the railway ministry goes to an alliance partner, so be it. So I think it's very important that continuity of the kind that we saw in the last 5 years is not continued, so to say, and we see more reforms in these areas. I mean, there is a policy of the previous government that non-strategic PSUs will be privatized. There is a policy of asset monetization. Now, the question is, if we are happy with continuity, then I see an area of concern that continuity would mean no privatization, no further push to asset monetization, no labor law reforms, no farm sector reforms. So I think that is very, very important to keep in mind.
That's well put, Mr. Bhattacharya. Now, but by the way, we were talking about this welfareism. I was looking at the CSDS Lokniti data. BJP's vote share among the poor actually has gone up. So, and this kind of goes back to some of the points we were talking about earlier about, whether there'll be a change in stance or, and whether there'll be more sort of helping the masses and stuff like that. I mean, the data shows otherwise. Anyway, Mr. Bhattacharya, just, without tackling some of these more contentious issues, are there specific areas, do you think, where we can see a thrust from the government? Could housing be it? Is there one or two areas that you would like to identify whether it's possible? Yeah.
Taking off from what you just now mentioned about the CSDS survey, I think there would be a more refined approach to welfareism in the sense that if you believe, and I do believe, that this government is fiscally prudent, in the sense that it has not really used its resources. It has used its resources in a manner that the fisc by and large has been kept safe, although the overall target and trajectory has not yet been met. Now, so therefore, there would be some refinement in the welfare schemes by which a better targeting with the use of technology in the delivery system through the digital public infrastructure, that is possible. Mr. Srivastava talked about tweaking the Agniveer scheme so that the big shock that the BJP probably received in the way the Agniveer scheme was received in states like Haryana, states like Himachal Pradesh, which produces a lot of these soldiers, and
Rajasthan.
Rajasthan also. So I think it's possible that the Agniveer scheme may be tweaked, but I would hope that all those welfare schemes that are tweaked and made more focused do not bleed the fisc, because please remember that while fiscal consolidation has to be the primary task, it is also equally important how you use the extra money that the government has received from the Reserve Bank of India, which is almost as large as 0.37% of GDP, should be used more efficiently, effectively, and bringing about faster growth, creating more jobs, and ensuring that the kind of iniquitous growth that we have seen with the top half of the economy doing well faster than the bottom half, those issues are addressed.
Yeah, absolutely, gentlemen. Valid point, and I think that additional cushion of 1 lakh crore rupees from the Reserve Bank of India, that would be very, very timely, and it'll be very interesting to see how the government puts it to use, and we'll have those answers come the budget. Thank you for joining in. Of course, we'll keep coming back to you. Hope to have more of these conversations as we know.
Once we have the portfolio allocations, Mr. Bhattacharya and Mr. Srivastava, hope to have both of you back. And we're expecting that any time now. So hopefully, we'll be able to speak with you and get your reactions once we have that. Thank you for joining in.